Well, hello everyone. It's October the 22nd. Apple has just had its big shindig in San Francisco. Uh, Tim Cook dominated the stage for us.
Correct.
You know, his cohorts were there. Eddie Q, uh, Craig, and Phil Schiller. And to tell you what we thought about what they had to say for themselves, I would like to bring on a fantastic, absolutely wonderful panel, starting with no less than John Coles. John, welcome.
Good afternoon. It was certainly a very interesting keynote today.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And also joining me, a man from Palo Alto, Steve Jobs' home ground when he was around, Brian Monroe. Hello, Brian.
Yeah. Hi there. Yeah. Thanks for having me again. Glad to be able to actually comment about what we got a chance to see here. It was actually a lot of fun to see what they had announced and, take sort of analysis of what the analysis were prior to the event and then be able to actually talk about what sort of things that we actually got. And I'm glad to see we got the stuff we did. There's no question that the products need to be refreshed, that they did refresh.
Yep.
And it should be...
Well, okay, so that's true. But I would like to mash things up a bit and say, what didn't get refreshed? Now, who owns an iPod Classic? Well, let's not go.
One thing that didn't get refreshed that we had
None of the
speculation
iPods.
on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Was the Apple TV also is something that did not get refreshed. Okay, not that it needed it, that I feel.
That wasn't something that we were expecting.
No, but
we might see an update.
I suspect it might. Okay.
Just a second, guys. I want to make a point about this. I believe the hardware is good right now at this point, that they're going to be able to ride it out probably for another year at least for that to be good to go. Because I believe that they have plenty of other things on their plate they've already done here, including the Mini and the Air, which is they've done all the new iPads and they're doing other things they need to do. It's just the Apple TV itself was something that, again, the speculation was they were going to do an update there too also. So
okay, that's very interesting. iPod Touch is the only real one that anyone really cares about getting updated, and that wasn't updated, but.
Well, I might disagree with you on that. No, currently right now with the iPod.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
I mean, I just meant iPod specific. Like, that's the only one anyone knows.
Okay, well, iPods in general. Okay, well, I think in general in the market, we've already seen Apple kind of conquered that market. And there really is, you could say they could always take a breather for a year. It really is not a problem because many people now, of course, either have iPhones that are doing these things or iPads or other devices they're using for their media playing, and it really end up needing to have that refresh this year because there really isn't a need for that. I'm going to say ultimately, I'm going to say people also, I know people who have taken old iPhones because of the fact they're still functioning useful and turn them into like iPod touches because of the fact they still have the data plan and they still are useful as a device. You'll check email via Wi-Fi. Yep. You still can get onto iTunes, download your content and all that stuff. So it all still works and everything there. It's like that's, works there. So
okay, well, I think this is a rat hole, but so let's talk about what did happen. First of all, macOS 10 Mavericks is free for everyone. That's pretty rad.
I wanted to comment on it. As a matter of fact, this the software thing I think was a very, very important thing because an IT consultant that I am, seeing various different people with various different systems, and there's no question Apple is really on a tear to make sure everyone has the latest software. They don't want to have any excuses for somebody saying, "Oh, I don't have Mavericks. Oh, I don't have iOS 7. No. Or I don't have iWork. I don't have."
I think and I think the other thing is as we get closer to mashing the worlds of mobile and desktop together, that the models have to follow suit. It's like we have in-app purchases
it's not just
free
that.
update.
Yeah, I think it's
a security model.
Hold on. You give
it's a security
more of a reason to buy an Apple product.
Correct.
Yeah.
You extend the life of the product. That's one thing that's there, of course, one of the big things, but also the security model. The fact is, when you have everyone on the same version of the software, it's a lot easier to just patch one version of the software than worrying about 10-year-old software that has security bugs that have been fixed a decade ago. But ultimately, they've done a great job at Apple of getting everyone sort of going on the latest version of the software. Okay. Especially since we've seen Apple being able to roll out iOS 7 now, how easier it is for people, especially on the desktop side, that they're making it so they're, again, with iOS 6 7, 8 to go all the way to 9 now. No
Yep.
problems, basically.
So, I mean, quite frankly, I don't care what Brian thinks. I don't care what John thinks. I want to know what you think. And you can tweet us using the hashtag LTKiPadEvent, and we'll read your comments out if they're worthwhile. And but let's go back to our stupid thoughts. So, Mavericks, I'm sure you're all going to update today. Yeah?
Yeah, I will be. As soon as it's available on the App Store, and as soon as we're finished here and I've got spare bandwidth, I'll be going and downloading it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, again, what's going to be good to see, how the adoption rate of Mavericks goes, because I believe quite a few people are going to give it a shot that I know for a fact that have passed over 10.7 and 10.8 just because they just didn't really ever get around to it, that I can see some of the new advances they have in there, especially with the battery life thing. That's a gimme there. I mean, the fact is, if you have a laptop now with one of the MacBook Pros, and you want a little better battery life out of it, it's going to be a good one to get because everyone wants better battery life on their laptops.
Oh, of course.
As far as the desktop side goes, again, I'm going to say security model, including some of the new things to do with some of the tagging and some of the other things they're doing with the operating system. It looks like, again, they're circling the wagons to get things back on everyone on the same page. So that's going to be all good. So,
Of course, Brian. So Mavericks is free. New Macintoshes. I think what really blew me away about the new MacBook Pro Retinas was the pricing. I did not see that coming, but I suppose in another sense I did, because eventually one day they got to kill off the tubby ones with the optical drives and horrible displays and say everyone's having a Retina display. I don't know if that's what they're doing, but when the differences are that's getting smaller and smaller, I'm suspecting. So I suspect the others have been discontinued.
I agree. I mean, there's no question Apple likes to keep a clean, short product line. They've always been, they've luckily done that since Steve Jobs came back originally. They understood that they just can't have a million products out there. They want to say no more than they want to say yes. So the things they're going to say yes to they want to make sure are going to be their best products they can sell to people. So that's why it makes sense for them to have go from the Air, MacBook Air to a MacBook Pro Retina. They would have be an easy transition there. And ultimately, again, optical drives, use the optical bay, is something that is not used as much anymore at this point. And, you can definitely do without it for quite a few users. And when you need it, again, there is external drives you can pick up. Apple does sell the external CD, DVD drive.
And they have the remote technology, but let's not get...
And the remote technology, that's correct also.
We don't need to get too deep into that.
Yeah, of course.
There's also the new Mac Pro. I mean, we already knew about that, and that's going to be coming out in December. So...
Yeah.
Kids, get it on your Christmas lists.
Lists, yeah.
Lids, yeah. Christmas lids.
But Santa definitely would appreciate that, because he's got that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
We had a prediction show the other day, and we all debated what the price would be. And John said $299, and he was like, they're going to say it's the same price. He was right.
Well, John was right on. I agree. He was right on about that. And I'm glad to see they got the price where it is, because no question people are going to be buying this. It's expensive, obviously, of course. It's very much a luxury laptop. I mean, I'm sorry, desktop computer, I meant to say, but for the people that need that kind of power, I'm glad to see it's finally going to be there by the end of the year. We'll be able to start having people putting orders in, and basically 2014 will be the year we'll be able to really see some people really start deploying these in big numbers.
I am still, and I think I always will be a little cagey about, the graphics are great today, but what about tomorrow? Because graphics card has always been the high performance part that you can always upgrade, and it just seems a little unnerving to me that you won't be able to in this new one. But
But you've got to remember, at the end of the day, the graphics that they've put in there is different than your average graphics card.
I know,
it's a workstation.
It is a work, but like workstation PCI cards can be swapped out. So
yeah, well, I imagine theirs will at some point be able to be upgraded.
It'll be soldered in, believe me.
No, I think there's a reason why they've put it into 3 separate boards rather than try and fit everything on one.
I will give you $1 million if if it's upgradable. And you can spend that $1 million to upgrade your graphics card in your new Mac Pro.
So again, my take on this again is this is going to be for people that aren't really looking for doing as many upgrades on this as being more additions to it. You're using this as a base. That's again the philosophy Apple seems to be going with this. Is the idea is you're going to build devices around this. You have a bunch of hard drive potentially, or screens, or other devices that are going to be connected because they got a lot of what it say it's 4, 6. I think it's 6, right?
This is the thing that they said.
Works?
Oh yeah, it's 8 times smaller than the original Mac Pro. Yeah, it also has 8 times less stuff inside it.
Right.
So that means that anything that you now expand is an external expansion. It's not all going to be inside. There's quite a funny image on the internet of like a Mac Pro, the new,
with like loads of accessories,
with just loads of like RAID drives and just so much stuff plugged into it, and that's what it's going to be. But that way is actually a good thing because it means it's a lot more easy to replace things as you need.
Of course.
Right, and again, like I said, it's something that's going to be a foundation for people to work off of. Of course, as we know, technology does move quickly, and for people that really want the fast production, quick updates and everything else, obviously that's what Apple's doing on their portable lines, whether it be the MacBook Pro Retinas, or what they're even doing with the iPad line, of course, where they get yearly updates, annual updates. So you're buying this as more of a long-term truck kind of thing. You're going to buy it for, and that's the mentality in essence. So
it's that truck analogy. What was it? It was like not everyone's going to have a truck, but someone's going to have something.
Right, and again, the idea is that people who are hardcore producers who are doing again 4K video, or even doing real high-end camera graphics, if a picture is meant to say, these kind of people will be the people you're going to be seeing who want to have this kind of device, this Mac Pro tower. And I can see them being very happy with the computer because of the power that it provides them, along with the expandability that is there with the Thunderbolt 2.0 connection.
And Thunderbolt 2.0, and that's also in the new MacBooks, we forgot to mention. The new
Correct,
MacBooks Haswell on the 13s and
Haswell again
Crystal Well.
Yeah, sorry, Crystal Well on the...
Which is the name 15. For the quad cores, yes.
Right.
So that's cool.
So I want to touch on the iPad mini and the iPad itself. Again, I'm glad to see them keeping the same resolution available for both the Retina screens on the mini and the full-size iPad.
But the reality is Phil said it as if that was some big generous thing they're doing. There's no way to do it. They can't. You can't do half in between it. You just have to double.
I understand that. I know. I understand that. I'm just trying to make more of a point.
But you're right. Is that other devices have like different PPIs between devices, and it's just a horrible mess. So yes, this is a good thing.
Right.
The other thing is that they want to keep it the same for the developer. It's not.
And thank you. And again, that ties back around to my point about how everyone have the same version of the software. Was again the idea is, Apple is doing everything in their power, from what I can tell here, it looks like to me, to keep it so developers can target. They can target Mavericks. They can target iOS 10.7. That's all they have to worry about. They say, look, if you target those two operating systems, and obviously the computers that are underneath them, then it won't, a device is meant to say, it won't be a problem for your stuff to run. And the fact that there should really be not a problem for you having a good market for selling your wares. So there you go.
Yeah, and this is the thing, is that the Mavericks and iOS 7 brought in a lot under... there wasn't much change. iOS 7 there was in terms of the UI, but everything else was kind of under the hood performance tweaks. And it's the same with Mavericks. It's all about tweaking the current OS, but to be better and to be more user-friendly. And ultimately, that's what developers want.
Of course. No, of course. I completely understand that. So, side note on that new iPad mini with Retina display, it is now available in 128 gigabytes. This is not something that was mentioned during the keynote, but it is, in fact, available in that new capacity.
Yeah, I don't know how many people do that. I suppose if you put in a lot of video on there, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, if you travel a lot, like Netflix isn't always an option. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, definitely no question to people I know that you use iPads, that, again, it's like a laptop for many of these people, and they want to have local storage on there. So when they go on a trip and they want to be able to use it as like a portable DVD player to be able to watch a bunch of movies, before they go, they download a bunch of movies and stuff. The other thing that's happening there is, again, when they take photos and they may want to do some photo editing on the iPad itself, again, it makes sense to have that additional storage because, you're going to be taking a bunch of photos on a trip, and maybe you don't really have an opportunity to upload them to a service because the internet speeds where you're at are a bit slow, or, you just don't want to run around with a laptop of sorts.
Yep.
You might keep those things on your iPad, and then when you come home, you download the stuff, of course, and you get it over there. But
makes
there
sense.
you go.
Makes sense.
So,
what else? iPad Air, that came out of thin air, if you will. I didn't see that coming.
I agree.
I'm not sure how I feel about that name. I'm not sure that it's a good idea.
I think it was an interesting name, anyways, because again, they are making it so you think about the Air as being a lightweight item and using it across product lines makes sense. It doesn't necessarily initially roll off the tongue really well. iPad Air, it's kind of feels a little bit weird because it's not like MacBook Air. We've already got used to saying that, but I think over time people will get used to saying iPad Air and it'll be fine. So,
Okay. I guess it's very much just the iPad Mini case, bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The much faster system. There really wasn't much.
Well, again, about the 64-bit chip and the iPad Air, right?
Yes.
Again, one of those points that really gets there that I know they're really trying to drive home with their mobile line between the iPhone 5S and now, of course, the iPad Air is the fact that these are desktop class type devices, meaning really they're saying, look, developers, go at it. Make great software for this thing because the power is there that you used to have to be able to do on desktops. They're saying, look, they're saying really the desktop's done. Really, they're trying to say you don't need to sit there and worry about the desktop do certain classes of software anymore because you really get the power there on a portable device that it really is something that traditionally, again, you'd have to buy a desktop computer to do. Or even a laptop,
What are the specs on that iPad Minis, the new iPad Minis?
I didn't catch that.
I don't think they even mentioned the CPU and GPU on those two products.
Right. Again, I would love to see them. I would like to check the specs on that. But
well, I'm just looking at apple.com. If I go to iPad Mini with Retina display. Coming in November, 79-inch, not really, 7.9, A7. Okay, so A7 with 64-bit architecture. And
the Mini also does have, which would make sense it would, because they need the space savings, also part of the deal.
Yes.
That's one of the points I know they've made about having the battery life get better on the 515S. It's the 64-bit chip. Not only does it provide, of course, more capacity to store for the storage and more data gets transferred through the same time, but also it's a small device-sized chip, if I'm correct about that, I believe. So
I gotta say, I mean, the iPad Mini, the big sticking point for me was that the processor was pretty stale. It's that 3-year-old iPad 2 chip.
Again, I think, and then one of the points that comes up that you were talking about was the iPad 2. They're going to stick around on the product line. They were saying, right?
Stupid.
Wasn't it 3-year-old device?
It's going to be 3 years old in March.
One of the points that really has been made, and the websites I read about analysis, people talking these things, is really, there are certain classes of users that are really like the power-hungry users that want everything you can throw at them. They're going to go to the Mac Pro. They're going to go basically, they want the highest end things you can get. Don't forget that, that's not everyone Apple. Many people are buying these devices are first-time buyers for even technology. I mean, we really have to remember the next billion people are going to get these devices don't even have a computer,
Yeah.
So for them, an iPad 2 or even get an iPhone 5C or whatever, these devices really do meet their needs because they're coming from zero to something versus even if they had original, just a smart, just
I know,
phone,
but the iPhone 5C hardware isn't as peasant-like as the...
Again, I understand you're saying that, but let's be really, really clear about this. When you're going from zero to something, it's best to, a lot of times these people, I'm telling you, because I deal with the customers, this is the thing. Okay. People need baby steps. All that power that Apple's got and I'm not going to say they shouldn't have it. Absolutely. I'm glad they have in the 5S and the 64-bit chip and the iPad Air. But I'm going to be really clear about this, is that there's a certain class of user, which many of them are Android users, we're going to say ultimately now, that are just using the phone as a phone and they're not traditional, I'm going to call smartphone users. They don't use a lot of apps. They're not really into that kind of thing yet. They'll get there eventually. It's just you have to give them time to like sip on that thing. Just like when we go transitions in the United States, where we went from we had microwave machine before we didn't have microwave machines, and it was like we were going, how are we going to use this in my life, or automated teller machines. There's a lot of technology that takes a while for the public to just, generally speaking, get used to it. ATM machines, I'm going to tell you, I'm not this kind of transition here, but these are things where people were scared of because they're worried about not just getting mugged by them, but they're really, the idea that they really just felt confident talking to a teller. And again, the similar thing here. If you're just used to just a phone, getting used to the idea of using apps in the first place is something that, it's not something that just like comes overnight. It's there, but still it takes a little bit to get used to, especially since there's so many apps. So, there you go.
Okay, Brian. Well, that's interesting analysis there. John, do you have anything to say?
Not really. I mean, I'm with Brian on this one. From personal experience, it takes a long time especially for people who aren't necessarily who haven't necessarily grown up with technology to kind of adapt and be able to use.
Do you think an iPad 2 is something like, if your parents, I know they have iPads, but if you hadn't introduced them like you did, do you think an iPad 2, say, is something that you could have introduced them to?
I don't know. I think they're always going to have that discussion in the Apple Store and go, well, which one? And they'll go, okay, well, which one's the better one? I think a lot of people, especially kind of the over 40s market in the UK, will always go, well, which one's better?
Right.
And if the guy in the Apple Store goes, well, this one's the new one, and they'll go, okay, I want that one then. I don't think people are going to go, which one has the fastest CPU in it, because I want to be able to play Asphalt 8.
I think 3 years old is a scary number.
It is.
They're keeping it like they kept the white MacBook, which is for education.
But they updated the CPU in that. They kept that kind of current.
They did, but the iPad doesn't need a CPU.
And it's also the same old stale 30-pin dock connector. Like the iPad.
Yes, that's another good point. About dock connector. I'm just thinking about that now.
I mean, the 5C, at least you can say with the 5C analogy that's using current technologies.
And actually, it's interesting. I think the next refresh or WWDC, I think that's when you'll see the iPad 2 be dropped.
Right.
I think the next refresh of the iPad line, you'll see the iPad 2 be dropped. And I don't think we'll have two specifications of the iPad. We'll just have the iPad Air or whatever it's called.
What do you think of John? You were doing something unspeakable when we discussed this. But what do you think of the name iPad Air?
I don't like it.
I think it's weird.
I don't know why they've added it on, because that to me now they're going to do iPad Pro.
Oh, that'd be foul.
So they'll have iPad, iPad Pro, iPad Mini. We already have iPad Mini, and iPad Air. So.
That would be pretty foul.
I don't want them to. Maybe a Pro. No, a Pro version wouldn't be good.
I don't want to convolute it.
No, I think, Joe, you might be a little bit stretching there. Ultimately, we want to don't get ahead of ourselves, I believe, because ultimately, I understand why the mentality of the airline name was there, and that primarily is because, again, they're trying to bring the mentality of back to the Mac, but go the other way, kind of for the Mac, and this time back to the iPad kind of idea. So because of the fact that they got a really great branding on the Air brand, I really believe that's really a strong brand. They're trying to bring some of that magic over to the tablet side and say, look how thin it is. This is what we really want to highlight.
John Cole.
I think the other thing is that they need to have the definition between the two product lines. There's when you say, oh, do you have an iPad? That could mean, this is called an iPad. You call this an iPad. I don't say, oh, do you have an iPad mini? I go, oh, do you have an iPad? And I'm like, yeah, I have an iPad. It's an iPad mini. But it's exactly the same with
there's nothing wrong with that.
Between the iPad 2 and the new iPad. No one calls it the new iPad. They just call it the iPad. Yeah. So you've got to, by calling it the iPad Air, there's a slight differentiation there that you know which version things are. They don't want to go back to numbers because numbers are messy.
Numbers are messy.
You can't go that high with the numbers until it gets mashed up.
Once you get to 9, that's when you really start to push it. You have to use X.
And I think honestly, they are probably, again, looking at numbers, at some point they're going to have to do something with the Mac OS 10.9 point whatever. And it's going to get I'm glad they're starting the Maverick thing. They've stopped referring now. It's no longer OS 10.9. It's just Mavericks.
Yeah,
Right.
but no, they've always done that. It's always been leopard and tiger. It's never been. They never
Yeah,
really.
but they've stopped doing. They've even stopped kind of referring to it as OS 10. It's just OS. Well, they call it OS 10 Mavericks, but it's just Mavericks now. When you listen to the keynote, they don't say OS 10.
That's always been that way, in my opinion.
It's
Right.
become more prevalent now. It's become much more noticeable.
The one thing they
don't
did do
say
is they dropped the Mac from it, but other than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does anyone?
iOS 7, iOS they'll have to stop giving numbers to eventually.
iOS 8 is getting a bit big,
iOS 8 doesn't sound as good as iOS 7.
but nor did 6.
Well, and iOS 8 makes you start thinking, I hate to say about Windows 8, then it's like, okay, what happens there? But honestly, no, I don't think, I think they're going to keep on doing what they're doing with the iOS line. And I don't really think it's that bad to say iOS 7, iOS 8, iOS 9. But at this point, I mean, of course, like everything else Apple has shown since Steve Jobs is no longer with us anymore.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, of course. That ultimately, I don't believe that the naming thing has to stay in the same conventions as they used to, which is exactly like you said, the Mavericks thing, because they can go off in different things. The cats now they go in places and they can go do the same thing that I can see them eventually doing with the iOS line, because it may help them again break out of that mold of give it a different kind of flavor to it. So
Of course.
Again, it's all and all this stuff's marketing stuff, really, honestly, because really, when it all comes down to the end of the day, is these products work great, which I believe many of them do, that people are going to buy them, and it's just a matter of making sure people can be clear about saying what you have, what you want, and make sure that there is actually a definition of, okay, I have a iPad Mini, and I can make sure people understand that's what you have, and then you start talking about iPad Air, okay, that's what you're looking for. It's easy to make sure it's communicated, especially around Christmas time or other people are giving gifts and everything, because you don't want somebody getting the wrong thing and be like, oh, I thought you were going to get me X and you got me Y. And it's like, well, it's just bad, so.
Yeah. I like the new lineup looks pretty good, and we'll see how well it goes with Christmas. I imagine Apple stock is probably down.
Oh, it always is. Who cares? That means absolutely nothing. So
I think it would be good.
The stock price, again, just a little quick thing on the stock price. I mean, I just got my quick little thing about that, is that the real biggest issue about that I find is many of the analysis people really are looking for short-term fixes, and Apple is just not that kind of a company. They're more of a slow and steady kind of tortoise.
By 1.92.
Right. They're more of a slow and tortoise kind of company, but they definitely do move at a steady pace. You're not going to see like many different models of iPhones throughout the year, like you'd see on the other Android and other kind of devices out there.
Apple is a company that you have to invest for 5 years.
Yes,
because there'll be a revolutionary product within some time when you're invested.
That's correct.
Because you don't get dividends. You don't invest for the short term.
I know.
That's correct.
So,
you invest for the long term.
Finishing comments on the keynote. I mean, who liked the keynote? Who thought it was a bad keynote? Good.
Oh, actually, I want to make a comment about that. I did feel it was kind of more of a lighthearted kind of keynote.
Well, no, I think they've started getting that confidence back since about WWDC 2013.
Right. I think they got a little more swagger with their keynote. I also say that there was actually one or two little points there you could see where some presenters were kind of like almost kind of flawed a little bit, but they really did a good job recovering. And
everyone gets tongue-tied. I mean,
I think it's hard.
I think the keynotes have got better from Apple.
They have.
They have been better, but again,
really
it's what I will say, and even the point about this is that it's important doing public speaking. Anybody that's going out and doing those kind of things, it's good to get practice. But I would say that no matter what you do, you're always going to have situations where you're going to make a mistake and need to be able to figure out how to recover. And people that in the broadcast industry learn these kind of tricks.
And Steve Jobs, whenever he screwed up, he would just make a joke out of it, and that's how you do it. You don't panic. You don't wet yourself.
Right. Right. And even and that's but again, like I said, I was definitely they did make some good zings against the other side of the camp, which was great. And it's nice to see them have some humor and comedy in the keynotes, and not just be totally just button up shirt, kind of like we're stiff people and we only can talk a certain way and very cadence like and everything else. It was more natural speaking. I'm going to say today was what I felt. What's your take on that? And
the humor was good. Craig did good. Right. I mean, it was all very well done, and it just had a nice flow to it. Which after Steve went, they really didn't, and then they've started to get that back, and that's a good thing. That's always a good thing. Now, John, any closing comments on the keynote today?
No, I think. Overall, good keynote. Interesting news from it. I won't be all of the software that's free I'll be downloading. I don't think I can see myself buying a new iPad or anything in the short term. The new Mac Pro looks sort of nice. I'm still not 100% sold on it. The price isn't the issue to me. It's just, it's cylindrical. I want it to be square.
I know,
and it's
I know.
too small. To me, it's
we
too
did
small,
this to death on the other day, so we
to
really.
me, it's slightly too small. I think that's my issue.
Again, my closing comments
But I still
get
won't.
back. My closing comments to get back to the software thing because of just what I do and what I see out there in the marketplace. That from a security standpoint, a developer standpoint, and an ease of use standpoint, training standpoint, all sorts of things that are positive when everyone's on the same version of the software. One of the things that's frustrated me about my career is when I've seen people who've had, you have see somebody who's got an older Windows system, and you know that they take advantage of the newer software would help them a lot, not be Office or Windows or whatever, but the price, because of the way Microsoft chose to develop their software and distribute it and make it out, they get it out there, including even the patching system they sort of don't really have working very well, at least until 8.1, I'm going to say. It's something that really you couldn't feel confident about installing on top of one, go from one to the other, really doing like an upgrade. You'd have to go out and toss out the computer, buy a whole entire brand new one, which basically move your data around. It was a whole entire mess. And this is something that's really helps. It helps security, like I said, because everyone gets to have the same software. Again, like I said about the developer, target one platform, one area, and training. Again, if someone's got iOS 7, you know what they have. It's not a problem. Or even Maverick, same thing. In a lot of areas, it's really great. So even the sales side, like I said, you go down to a store and the sales staff don't have to actually know, have to worry about, oh, you have this, you have that. No. It's like you have Mavericks, it's good to go kind of thing. So.
Well, yes, I completely agree with everything you just said.
Thank you.
I think that's about it. So I have been Joe DeMax, but first, who have you been, Brian, today?
I've been Brian Monroe today. That's correct. And every day it's been Brian Monroe. Reporting from Silicon Valley here. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Appreciate it. So.
Okay, and John Coles?
I've been John Coles. You can follow me on Twitter. It's down there.
Fantastic. I'm Joe DeMax. We have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/LiveTechKeynotes, where John uploads content every week sometimes. And follow us there.
I don't think it's /LiveTechKeynotes. It's /LiveTechKeynotes official.
No, that's the gaming. It's just /LiveTechKeynotes. Okay. So anyway, we will see you next time. And thank you for watching. It's been a great time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.